Hey guys, we're going to talk about React Router 2 today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let's take a look at the training kit just to kind of see what the objectives are for today. Okay, we're on single page application week. Let's take a look at React Router 2. It looks like for today's module, a couple of things that we're going to be able to do today. So far, we've only been able to actually render components to the page. Today, we're going to start to pass props using a render prop on the route, which is a little confusing because it's the word render, and we've seen that a couple of different places. But this is a render prop that actually passes props for us. It's a function that passes props for us to our component. So we're going to take a look at that today. We're going to take a look at nested routes. So where we are currently storing our routes is not the only place where we can actually keep routes on our application. We can actually utilize it within our components as well to render specific things the way we want to see them. The most common, I guess, test or case would be if, say, for instance, we have a page that has our item on it that we want to see with some sort of detailed view. And then we have tabs below it to indicate like what the shipping policy is versus like the actual description of the item. We can toggle between the two tabs using what we call a nested route. And so we'll talk about that today. We have this, I kind of mentioned this a little bit on Tuesday, we have this built-in history object. We're going to be able to use that history object to actually navigate to other pages. So as opposed to, say, for instance, having a button that is surrounded by a link, we're going to have a button that has an on-click that is a function that is going to push another web page onto our history object. So we'll get into that a little bit later. I know it sounds kind of super confusing right now, but we'll go through it nice and slow a little bit later on today. And then we're going to take a look at the difference. Brian touched upon this last night in the Q&A. We're going to talk about the difference between link and nav link and when to use which to navigate declaratively between routes. A lot of these are just going to be example cases. I will say that nav link is something that I don't use very often and haven't used very often. In fact, I had to review what navlink was for this lecture today. So so forgive me if my knowledge is missing on this navlink item. If you ask me questions about it, I'm probably going to have to go look up the answer. So just because there's a little bit of a hole in my knowledge there. So let's go ahead and get started. Any questions before we do so? Make sure there's not anything in channel. It's okay. Okay, so let's take a look. This is where we left off yesterday. We have our import here from our React Router DOM package after we installed it using, well, we would install it using yarn-add on our, if we were in an IDE. But here we just added the dependency here, or rather it was already there for us, but that's how we would add it. It would be down there. We imported browser router as route and link from React Router DOM. We're going to use browser router down here in our React DOM render, where the router basically encapsulates the entire application. So this allows allows us to actually kind of navigate as a single page application on our actual website. So basically, this takes the entire app, puts it on index.html, and then renders the entire application to the page. And if we recall the difference between client-side routing versus server-side routing, client-side routing is that single page kind of idea. So it has one index.html page, does all of the routing on the client side through the React application, whereas server-side rendering actually utilizes multiple HTML pages and makes a call to some sort of server on the back end. So there could be a little bit of lag in navigation. It's not necessarily as great of a user experience, but there could be, definite pros and cons for using either case. But what we're learning right now is client-side routing. So we have this router. It encapsulates the application. And then if we navigate up, looks to be we have some data coming in from our data.js, and it looks to be, it's just an array full of objects. Okay. Currently we are, it says here that we are setting this data on state, but we aren't necessarily using it quite yet because we have yet to kind of go over how to pass those props down. Just know that it's here, and then we already have a function that is setting that data on state. This is where, and we'll get into this on Tuesday of next week, this is where we'll make any sort of API call to, fetch some data. We have, looks to be a nav bar here that has a link. And again, we're using the link that comes from route, a link that links to home. And then we have another link that links to our actual shop. It's very important to remember that the link component has a to prop that goes to, that matches the route that you have written down below. So we have these routes as well. So we have a route with an exact path of just the backs or just the forward slash. We have to make sure that, and it's a home component, and we have to make sure that whatever we have linked to go home has to match in the to field. So the to field and the path field have to match if the route is going to work with the link. So that's kind of very important to know. Otherwise, I mean, you can write whatever you want here, but whenever you click on that link, it's not going to render anything onto the page because we don't have any, there's nothing there. There's nothing at route that has a path of slash whatever I want. So it's just going to be a blank page. Let's see. We have these routes. Remember, we use the keyword exact when we want to be sure that this right here is the only thing that is going to render this particular component. Otherwise, if we did not have the word exact, and we would try to move this, and we would try to actually go to our shop, it's going to render the home component on top of the other page that we want to. It's not what we want. We want them to be separate. So in order to do that, we have to put this exact keyword on the route. That way, whenever we go to the shop, it actually switches the actual page as opposed to right one on top of each other. That's kind of what we want.
Hey, what do you have on the shop that allows it to do that? That when you click on it, it goes to those pages.
Here?
Yeah. What do you have? Is that a component?
This is this right here.
Okay, so the component is items list. No?
Yes. So it's the path is going to item list, and item list down here is a route that has a path of item list, and it is going to the item list.
Okay. I see.
Yeah. Hold on one second. Got a little ahead of myself. Component equals item list cannot be property of the time. Component items. Oh, that makes sense. All right, hold on. Copy. I worked on this a little bit earlier today, so I probably accidentally have a couple of things that are data. Oh, come on. Thank you. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. All right, so we have the route with the exact path of item list. And why is exact on item list? Why don't we just have it as route path equals / item list?
Because you wanted to only show the item list, right?
Yeah, we wanted to only show the item list. But if we were to go to item list / ID, what would happen if we did not have exact on here?
It would be layered on top of each other.
Say that one more time.
It would be layered on top of each other, like it would overlap.
Exactly. So if we were to click on this, it would be all the way down at the bottom. And that's not what we want. So we need to have that exact on there in order for it to work properly. Any questions about anything I have said so far? We'll get to the match thing here in just a second.
I guess I'm starting to understand the exact, but when would there be an instance in which like something like e-commerce is the usual thing to not be to use exact?
So I honestly could not understand what you were saying. Can you drop what your question in Slack?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. While we're waiting for Josh's question, any other questions?
What would happen if you use exact path on item list or ID instead of just item list?
Well, let's see. That's a really great question. Oops. I can't. I can never type. I can't type in front of people. I think that's what it is. All right. Same thing.
Okay, is it because it's using item list first?
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
I think it's the same reason. One of the other things you can do too, how many of you are familiar with JavaScript switch statement in using conditionals as opposed to if-else statements? Is that something you guys are familiar with?
I mean, I know how it works, but I never use it.
Okay, so would you guys like a quick lesson in what it means to have a switch statement?
Yeah.
Okay, So routes have a switch statement is like an if-else statement. So it's basically multiple if-else statements in a row. If you have like something where you have like more than 3 if-else statements in a row, I would probably use a switch statement. On a switch statement, you know, pretty much is just kind of right down here in the notes. It has some sort of case, you know, or condition here. And if the condition is this, so case result A is this, you're going to return this. If the case is result B, you're going to return that. Oops. And so on and so forth for as many cases as you have. So it's just kind of a neater way. And then a neater way to actually do like a conditional statement. So this is like in addition to the ternary statement, which is another popular kind of conditional type item. And then every switch statement has a default case. And in this case, we'll just return. So this is like the basic syntax for a switch statement in JavaScript. So what we are going to do is we're going to take this idea, we're going to translate it to React Router, because React Router does have a switch that you can use. And this can help when it gets to a point where your URLs are getting super long, or a lot of them are very similar to each other, so you don't have to use that exact keyword all of the time. The exact keyword is very helpful, but utilizing a switch statement is definitely a much cleaner, it results in a much cleaner code. So I use switch statements all the time. And I'm happy to kind of show you what one looks like. So we're going to go back down to our router here. Let me see. So say, can you provide an example of a moment in e-commerce? We wouldn't need an exact path to make a new page. I'll have to think on that one, Josh. Let me think on that one. Okay. That maybe the switch statement will answer your question. So up here, and everything else that we're importing, we're also going to import switch with a capital S. And then down here in our route, right above the first route, we're just going to type the word switch. And then you're going to take the end tag and put it down below the last route. It's as simple as that, quite honestly. And then let's see, shop. So do I have it on the wrong exact path? Component. What if I do this? Okay. So for the switch statement, you want the most specific item to come first, just like in a conditional. So the famous one that you guys have probably all done is the FizzBuzz one. I assume you're all familiar with FizzBuzz. You all did that probably in pre-course. So when you have a conditional, you want the most specific condition to come first. And then you get down to your more general conditions until finally you have your default condition. So that's kind of how a conditional works. It's how the basic difference between an if-else statement and a switch is that a switch will look up and down and return the last item or return the first item that matches the entire string. So that's the basic idea. But order matters for whatever reason, and I'm not entirely certain why that is, but they like to have the most specific item first. So that's why you don't necessarily need the exact keyword on path when you have a switch statement. And these are getting more and more popular to use. You'll see these a lot more. And of course, you can look up switch statements in the docs. Router, redirect.
What's this? ReactTraining.com.
Yeah, this is the docs for the React router. It's actually a really nice docs page because they have basically your stuff here, and then they have an example just to the right of it, which is really nice.
See, I was just saying that it's in alphabetical order, so it's on the left side. Just scroll down to switch.
Routers. Oh, thank you. All right, so this one renders the first child of route or redirect that matches the location. So if you want to not use the exact keyword everywhere, put the most specific item first. That's the big difference with the switch. With no switch, it would just render the minimal. So you have to use the exact keyword. It'll use rejects to look at the route, the route path, I should say, and return them like the one that's like the most minimum. I don't know how to say that. The minimum matched one, the one that matches the least. Oh my gosh. Okay. It's almost Friday. So that's the big difference with the router or the route and the switch. The switch is full of routes, and it matches the first child when you click on a link.
So we didn't have a switch in there, and because you said when you add switch, the routes you have to change the way they're listed on there, right? By most descriptive.
Yeah.
If we didn't have switch on there and we switched the way they were on there, like home was on the bottom, would the page render different?
Well, that's a really great question. Let's find out. And then I assume we would take off the exact keyword. Refresh. Okay. Well, let's do it. Let's start from the top. So let's start from home. My sharpener doesn't work. Go here. Okay. Good observation. I think putting home on the bottom would work because it's the last one.
Okay, so does it just read like the first dash and then it adds dashes as it or whatever's after the dashes?
Yeah, it reads. So have you guys heard of regex at all? Like regular expressions?
Yes, it's a very complicated subject. Has a bunch of different options, and it drives me crazy. I one time I tried to get into regular expressions, and it's complicated. Yeah, it's you have to use yeah, that.
So it's only as complicated as you can make it out to be.
Mm,
You kind of just need to figure out. You need to memorize the syntax. That's all, and then like play with it. That's the main thing. Is play with it. I'll drop a couple of links in channel to kind of help you guys play with regex a little bit. This is by no means like required reading. It's just if you are interested and you want to dig a little deeper, by all means. Um, I started regex probably about when I was in your um, where you are in the curriculum, and now I'm super comfortable with it. At first, I was not comfortable with it at all. Um, so let me drop this link here. This is a really great kind of tutorial on regex. The really great thing is that basically these exercises, they're looking for a regex expression that match all three of these strings.
mm.
So we can do obviously A, B, C, but then D doesn't work. So we can do, let's see what else is over here. We can technically do any character, but we have to do multiple of every character. So we can either do the plus sign or we could do the multiplication sign. Either one would work. So I think the most complicated thing about regex is that there are many solutions.
Yeah, it's really powerful, especially with databases. SQL is extremely helpful. But I really haven't had the opportunity to get deep into the material. But I know it's powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a really great tutorial, so I'm going to drop this one. My old project manager showed me this tutorial, and it was super helpful. And then there's one more. This is the one I use all the time right now when I'm testing regular expressions. This is a great tester site, but it also has some really great references there on the side too, like a cheat sheet.
What
So,
did you say regular expressions were used for?
they're used a lot, obviously, in computer science, but I've used them to look for, like in my labs project, we were doing a call to an API, and it returned a date string that had all sorts of information in it, and all I cared about was the year. So I created a function that basically pulled the year out of the object or out of the date string, and so I could utilize that. Basically that's one use case. I mean, there are many use cases for regular expressions, but I would mainly look for, like, say, for instance, you have a list of, I don't know, addresses, and you wanted to make sure that the address when somebody entered it was of the correct format. So like number, street name, city, state, zip. And you wanted to make sure that it followed the correct format, you can create a regular expression for that. Or if you wanted to make sure that somebody was typing in a phone number correctly based upon the country they're in. So you can create a regular expression to make sure that you've got three digits dash 3 digits dash 4 digits for a US phone number, for instance. So you can create a regular expression for that.
Yeah, it's like a special pattern that you use to extract information on a string. That's basically what I think is a regular expression.
Yeah, so it's used a lot to validate data.
Mm.
That would be
Gotcha.
a big use case, I think.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no problem. So, but React Router uses regular expressions to basically validate that path string. And it looks at the path string and uses regex to evaluate that path string, and it matches the first one. So that's basically how React Router uses regex.
Or it's true because it uses the semicolon to find the string after the semicolon.
Yes.
Mm.
Here. Yes.
Mm.
So, but anyway, that's kind of how React Router kind of looks at regular expressions and utilizes regular expressions to kind of evaluate what you've got going here and what to display on the screen. So that's what it is looking for. But here, for instance, like we have items list or item list /0. Because item list /0 is the very first item that's listed, it's not even going to look at the rest of those. If it was last, it would be at the bottom of the page. So kind of order kind of matters, and you can kind of manipulate the order to fit your needs. For me, I would put the most specific item up first, and then I would put, oh, wait, hold on. Oh, interesting. Okay. You see what happened there? So maybe we have to take back everything I said. Look at that. Like what happened here. That's an interesting anomaly. So we have our items list ID, we have our items list, and we have our home all showing up, rendering one right after the other. Now let's put that inside a switch and see what happens. So we are on items list 0, and it only renders the 1. We only have the 1. We only have the 1. So the switch does operate like a conditional. So it only renders one of these. It doesn't render all of them. If it wasn't in a switch, it would render all of them. So I take back a little bit of what I said. I apologize.
So when you use switch, you don't have to specify the exact, right?
Correct.
It will specifically go to wherever you click on the link.
Yeah, as long as your home is on the bottom.
It's at the bottom. Okay.
If your home is on the top, you still need to use that exact keyword.
Okay. So you have to put your route from the less specific to the more specific.
Just flip it. Most specific to the least.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. The other way around. Yes. Okay.
Other way around. Yeah. That's the way to get around using that exact keyword. And actually, that's good practice for whenever you're constructing a conditional anyway, honestly. I mean, because if you think about it, like when you look at a conditional, you want to find out like the most, exact thing first. You want to find out the most specific thing first before it becomes more inclusive. So say like on FizzBuzz, for instance, it's looking for, a number that has a multiple of 3 and a multiple of 5. That's going to be the most specific item, right? Because there's going to be more that are multiples of 5 and more that are multiples of 3 than there are numbers that are multiples of both, right? So for FizzBuzz, we put the most specific condition first, and then the others, and then finally we just return the number because that's the least specific, right? So that's when you're looking at the logic for that conditional. It's very easy to go from most specific and then kind of go down to that least specific item. So I construct a lot of my conditionals in that manner. And I think that prevents a lot of bugs and errors. So I would encourage you guys to do the same thing.
Okay. So in a backend application, do you normally use route with different path a lot, or you normally do everything on the same page, on the same path?
It depends. I'm thinking back to my labs project, we had a lot of different routes. Like we had, obviously with the app, the root of our component tree, and then we had like 2 different layers to our application, or 3 different layers to our application. We had a search feature, we had a reviews feature, and then we had a subscription component. So each kind of path, like user journey, had its own kind of route, if that makes sense. So on the reviews, the route was like reviews slash review ID slash like user or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But and then on the search, it was like whatever the URL was from the API plus the query string that the user put in. So that was its own route. And then the subscription had its own route. And then it got more specific as the deeper that somebody got into the application, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I guess it's easier to work with different routes than trying to like mimic on the same path, like disappearing diff or making them showing up. It's easier to go with different routes.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
We're going to have a use case a little bit later where we're going to have some nested routes inside one of our components. So we're going to have a route on our, I think it's our item list /ID. And then inside our item component, we're actually going to have 2 routes that does something depending upon, where we're clicking. So it's going to render something different depending upon where we're clicking.
Okay.
Any other questions? We've been going for a little while, so we could take our first break. So let's take a break. I'll give you guys 5 minutes. We'll see you in 5. All right, come on back. Any questions that came up over the course of the last 5 minutes?
And to reiterate what you're saying for Switch, we just wrap our routes inside of it and put them in like the least specific order, and we're good. We don't have to do anything else.
Yep.
All right, cool.
Was it least specific order or most specific order first, then to least?
Most to least.
Most to least, yeah. Okay.
Just want to make sure.
Yes, most to least. Yeah. And then Wes and I believe it was Alberto. I looked into the movie is loading problem you guys are running into. You guys need to look. Can you look at the component did mount and see if you have a line that needs to be written? There's like directions there for a line that needs to be written.
Yeah, I did. I added that line.
Added that line.
Yeah.
All right.
Trying to find it.
Yeah, I have that as well. When you're declaring the ID.
Yeah. Pull it up. Double check. Are you guys using the props.match.params.id online or whatever?
Yeah. So what I did is I just console log this dot props, just see what's available, and then I just put my const ID equals this dot props dot match dot params dot id.
Okay. And then is there can't recall on the original project, is there a fetch movie function below that for you?
Yes.
What you're going to have to do is fetch the movie. Wait, hold on. Does it say this.fetch movie in parentheses ID?
Yeah, it says that right below my ID, like above the fetch movie.
Okay. Can you send me a link to your GitHub repo and I will play with it later?
Sure.
And same with you too, Alberto.
All right. You want me to send it on this channel, or you want to just?
You could just DM it to me.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's talk about render. So render is a way for us to actually pass props to our components. Right now, what we are doing is we are actually importing the data that's in this file right here. So we're importing it into each of our components right now. And we don't want to necessarily do that. You're not going to do that in the real world. In the real world, you're going to, play with some sort of API, retrieve information that way, talk to a backend. You're going to do that instead of grabbing items from a dummy data file, essentially. So let's talk about how to pass props and utilize props, or utilize the render prop to actually pass our props. That's so many props. So let's try it, see what happens. Let's go back to our index.js. And then what we are going to do is on our item list component, we have, if you take a look at our component did mount, we are currently taking the data that we have being imported from our data file. So we are taking that, we are setting it on state as items. So we're replacing this array with our array of objects on the component did mount. So what we want to do is we want to take that state and pass it down to our item list so that when we get to our item list, we no longer have to import that data. Okay, so let's go down to our index.js, down to our route. So we're going to take a look at our item list. Now, if we take a look at the React router, where is render? Render match props. That's not it. Render. There we go. Okay. Get rid of this. Don't need that anymore. Okay. So let's just take a look at the props that we have available for route. We have a match, we have location, we have history, which we already know that. And then on the actual component itself, we have the component prop, we have this render prop, and we actually also have a children prop. The children prop is essentially equivalent almost to the render prop. You probably won't see it very often. If you do, there's probably some sort of animations or associated with the component or something like that. So if you ever come across this, just utilize the docs and utilize examples that you might find online to kind of get the gist of what's going on. We're not necessarily going to go over this here today. We're going to go over this render function. So if you take a look over here, we have our route and we have our render method here. And it is a function that has route props as a parameter. And it's a big arrow function that basically returns some JSX. And in this instance, it's going to return our component with its props. So let's kind of see that. Let's see that in action. So we're going to change component to render, and it's going to throw an error. And then let's get rid of this. We are still going to do some JavaScript, so we still need those curly braces. We need a set of parentheses to indicate we are doing a function. And we're going to do a big arrow function or fat arrow function, however you would like to say it. And then we are going to return some JSX. Oops, wrong key. Item list, just like that. And then as a prop, we are just going to pass down props like we normally do. Items equals this dot state dot items. And I am pulling that from here. And then when we go to our item list, right now it's throwing an error. But if we look at the console log of the props that are on item list, you see that right now, I mean, we're hitting the fact that there is a prop, but right now there's just nothing in our array. And there's nothing in our array because of one little thing.
Oh, because I think on the render you have to pass props, I think, right?
Props dot items. There we go. You're close. It was all because we don't have, we had data as opposed to.
Oh, right.
So that's the only reason. So we changed it to props, but props isn't going to work. But we noticed, I mean, this is our props object, right? Because we're console logging props. So props dot items will get us what we want. So let's try dot items dot map, and then there's our items list. We have
that's because you said items to data on state, right?
Yes, because we don't have it being imported anymore. I took that out deliberately to throw an error.
Could you have done it the first time around, or no?
Yes, totally. I mean, I would probably I think the way they present the information here to you guys is deliberate, so you guys don't get overwhelmed right away. But normally, yes, this is what you would do. You would immediately do a call to an API on your component did mount. You would set it to state, and then you would pass that state down as props. That's how you would normally do it. We just did it this other way, just to kind of, get you working with a React router first before we actually messed with passing props down.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions about the render? Oh, yeah. One other thing too. I just wanted to kind of take a look at this. Why is that working? It's not supposed to work. Interesting. Save. Oops, I don't want to do that. Save all. Let me reload this page. prop. Oops. Why is that working? That's not supposed to work. Interesting. Very interesting. I want to look at this page real fast. Interesting. They're using Redux. All right. Hold on. Yeah. It's going to be easier if I pull it out. Pull it out. Now let's inspect. Okay. So we have our shop here, here. Oh, interesting. Okay. It's on state and not props. That's interesting. I learned something new today. Cool.
Try to do it on the second item and see if it picks the number one.
Oh, yeah. Nope. It still.
Yeah.
Yeah. It still works.
Yeah, because you're not passing the props for the router for the router state, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, because it's not on state. So, but the history and the match is not showing up in props either, which is interesting. So, and that there's a reason for that, and that's why I thought it would break, is because we're not actually passing the router props down on to the actual component as well. So when we are passing items down, we should also be passing the actual props that come with the router. So, and then the props.match, the props.location, props.history, these are all things that need to be passed down. And the easiest way to do that without going into too much explanation about it is just use the spread operator and do props.
Let me ask you a question. This has something to do with the fact that we are using switch instead of route. I'm sorry. Yeah, because I don't know. Well, it might have something to do with that. Because in switch is picking just one option, one route. I don't know. It's just
I'll have to look into it more and see. Oh, let me go back. Oh wait, I'm not in the right. I need to be in the item list. Item. Now we have just the props. Interesting. So it was picking it up from state before, and now it's picking it up from props. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that more. So maybe ask Dustin why that is, because I'm not entirely certain. So, but I bet you anything it has something to do with the switch. So I think you're right. So I'm gonna look into that more.
If you remove the switch and put the exact on route and remove the props and see if it works.
Yeah. So move the switch. Remove the switch. We need to put our exact.
And then remove the props from the.
Go back to shop. Let me reload it just in case. Go here. Reload. item. All right, I think there's something going on with my cache. So I think it's cached. I might have to log out and log back in.
Mm.
So, because that should not be happening. It should not be. It should not be doing that. That's interesting. All right, so double check. We have browser router, go into router, go into app. And we're looking at this right now. That's awesome. So good, good.
You guys kind of lost me with your troubleshooting. I'm not really sure what's going on.
Well, if you are on the top page, you will probably have the props on the home page, but okay, over there on the item.
Yeah, it's there. That's interesting. It shouldn't be happening. So the moral of the story is that in order for it to work properly, you have to pass props in addition to items in order to utilize this.props.match.params.id later on down the road. So you have to pass props down. So you get the this dot match this dot props dot match, this dot props dot history, or what have you. So you have to pass this down in addition to whatever it is you're going to pass down from your state in order to utilize the params on match later, if that makes sense. And we're utilizing the spread operator as a shortcut, but this is essentially equivalent to history equals history, or I should say props dot history, and so on and so forth. Match equals props dot match, and so on and so forth. So the props, the dot 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 props, is a shortcut to kind of just pass down all of the props that we currently have on our component and pass and spread it out over another object in your next component. That's basically all that is doing. And I can drop a link to what the spread operator is doing later. Okay. Any questions on the render method, how we create this function, how we pass down these props, how we pass down our actual data, and how to get it to show up in our items list?
Yeah, I was good. I understood like when you did the dis dot props up until you were trying to figure all that out. And then right now I got lost.
Just know that when you're utilizing the render method, right here, we are taking our props, passing it in as an argument to our function, and then we are returning some JSX, just like we've always done, right? When we're passing, when we're returning a component.
Right, like when we're doing a component, we're doing items list, and then we're passing items to this dot state dot items.
Yes.
Okay, and then the props spread operator, you said that was so we can use props dot what was it?
props.match.params. Whatever. In this instance, it's ID.
Okay, how does it know to assign it to all that, or how are we assigning it to props dot match dot?
So this is encompassing everything that is. Let's try that again. Okay. There is React. Here we go. Everything that's on item. So everything that's on the props object, when you're in React Router, it includes props.history, props.location, props.
Okay, so it's passing down props to history, location, and match.
Yes, it's taking what's already on served as props that are on app. So right now it's an empty object, but by definition, React has a history object, has a location object, and has a match object associated with it. And when you go down to the next level of component, it has those objects on props for you by definition through React Router. The only difference with this version and this version here is that when you're using components, the props are passed down implicitly. When you are using render, you have to explicitly pass down the props.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you use the component version, you actually don't need to pass anything into your child component.
That is if you want to pass props yourself, so if you want to pass any sort of data, you have to utilize render.
Yeah.
If you don't need to pass data, you can just utilize the component prop, and it will implicitly pass the props.match, props.history, props.location down to that next component. So that's built in. You don't need to worry about passing those props.
Okay.
So right there, for the item list, you're passing the props because you're passing down all the data for each item, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's just a component with just that you're creating pretty much like the home page, you don't need to pass down props.
Correct.
Okay, makes sense now.
Okay.
Hey, and this might be a weird question. And when you say like passing down data, would data most likely be on state?
Yes. This data.
Well, I know in that data. I mean, like just in general, though.
Oh, yes. Usually when you make a call to an API and you fetch some data, you put that data on state so you can mess with it.
Okay, so in a React application, you usually just have one state, right? Usually, is that like best practice?
You have one state that I shouldn't say you only have one state. You have one main state, like where I think the bulk of your data is going to be stored, but then you might have other smaller state objects on other components where it's going to work with, say, for instance, a user's input on a form, or it's going to hold like a movie ID that you pull from, the API or, something similar. So you're going to have one main state object, and usually that's an app.js or the highest level component you have. And then you're going to have smaller state objects that deal with like client input or something else, another call to the API where it gets a smaller object back.
Okay, so when we have those smaller states, we'll also get the data from there as well.
Yeah, and I think in your movies project, if I'm not mistaken, you have your state that's on app.js, but you also are working with state in movie.js as well. So there are a couple of different instances of state in your project that you are working on this week. So just know that the main data will be housed at the highest or in the parent component. That would be a good practice, because mainly you want the components that concern themselves with that data to have access to that data. And so you're going to put it in the least common, or the nearest common ancestor, if that makes sense. So that all of those components can have access to that data if needed.
So whenever you are going to manipulate data on a specific component, you need to have a class with the set state. Or is there any case where I can manipulate a set state that is in my, let's call it a father class, from a functional component? It cannot happen, right? It have to be a class if I want.
It has to be a class component. Yeah, at least for right now, at least for what you guys are doing. Yes, there is a new API that was out as of February called React Hooks, and React Hooks now allows you to manipulate data using functional components, but that's outside the scope of our conversation about React right now. You guys are more than welcome to kind of look into that yourself, but that's currently not in our curriculum. So because it's not 100% stable yet, but I believe changes are coming. So
okay, I wonder when these people of Facebook are going to stop doing things.
I'm never gonna stop doing things.
It's a new thing every 6 months.
It's overwhelming, right?
Yes, it is. It is, especially when you are learning new things like we are. It's like you get something now, and 2 weeks after you say, "Well, what you learned before is gone."
Right, exactly. That's the tough thing, I think, about being in the industry that we're going into.
Yeah. I mean, it's good because the pretty much the whole story of how it originates and where it is right now. But yeah.
So it's going to be really great for you guys to have a solid understanding of why we need class components, and then when you guys learn hooks later, you're going to really kind of identify with the reasons why hooks exist. So it's really great to kind of have this solid understanding of what class components are, what they do, what their purpose is, and then the more you develop, I believe, the more you're going to kind of find fault or see like little things about class components that could be improved. And then React Hooks tries to kind of solve those problems. So there's a really great talk by Dan Abramoff and Sophie, I can't remember her last name. They're basically the creators of React, and they kind of discuss the reasoning behind Sophie Alpert, the reason why React Hooks exist and what problems it solves. So I would highly recommend, once you start kind of diving into hooks, to watch that video. I can't remember how long it is, but it's a really, really interesting conversation.
It's like an hour and a half. I watched it. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah. Hour and a half. You'll learn a lot. I learned a lot.
Yeah. They're both interesting individuals, and it's an interesting conversation. So, but anyway.
Also, it's good to know all this because even though you are going to create new software, you are also troubleshoot and keep on previous software written. So if you don't know classes or anything before, you're lost, and you need to go back and then study all those. I wouldn't say technologies, but the different ways you can write code. So not just for writing new code, but keeping old code also.
Yeah, absolutely right. Legacy code is probably going to be like a lot of what we're going to work on when we get our first jobs in the industry, right? So we're going to be working on fleshing out bugs and everything else. And so we're going to have to be able to I think Luis Hernandez, he's the one of the back end our instructors here. He calls it brown code or brown grass code because it's old. It's old and it's dying and everything else. And so but yeah, it's basically legacy code, and it's something that we're going to have to be able to read and know how to fix later on down the road. So this information is going to be relevant for years to come. So
yeah.
But anyway, so let's continue real quickly, and then we'll take a break. I want us to be able to take this ID route path and change this component prop to a render prop. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take away component, put render, and then inside the render, we're going to have a function that has props passed as an argument, and it is going to return an item here.
It's going to return an item list, right?
No, it's just going to return one item because it's the.
Oh, right. The item, yes.
Well, yeah. And then here we're getting the error that I was looking for earlier. Cannot read property params of undefined. So this is the error that I was actually looking for earlier. And we can't see it because there's an error. But this is looking for props.match.params.id. And then because we're using the render method, we have to explicitly pass down the match location and history object. So this is where that spread operator comes in handy. And we pass down those props. And this is how this page is able to see this particular ID. Any questions on this? Okay. Let us take 5. And then when we come back, we are going to take a look at nested routes. What is probably going to have to happen tonight is that I let you guys go at 8:30, and then I will record the last objective on navlink versus link, and I will send it to you guys. So, because I want to let you guys out on time so you guys can work on your projects. But let's go ahead and take 5 minutes. Let's start to head on back. Thank you, DJ. All right. Yes, I am still sharing my screen. Okay. All right, so the next thing we want to take a look at is nested routes. So to do that, what we are going to do is we're going to take a look at our individual item, and what we want to do down here is basically we're going to have like a little nav bar down here that's going to have a description link here, a shipping link here, and we're going to be able to toggle between the two. I shouldn't say toggle. Click between the two, and it's going to show something different here depending upon what we click on. So that's basically what the next part of this project is. So we're going to go to our item.js. And let's get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. Let's change that to props. Props.items.find. What's the error here? Find an undefined item equals props.items.find. Return item.id props.match.params.id. Why doesn't that work? Give me 1 second. Mouse item props. Items.find. Gotcha. Here, let me just, for now, I am just going to copy pasta what he has. Interesting. Wonder why that is. Const item. We got props. Props.items.find. We have a thing. Equals props.match.params.id. All right, for now, I'll find the bug in this later, but there's a bug. There's a bug in this. So for now, we're going to leave this and we're going to import it like normal. So, okay, so let's take a look at importing a nav link. So we're going to go to the top of our project, and we are going to import nav link and route from React router. And then we're just going to jump directly down to underneath the two divs where it says item.price and item.name. We're going to jump down here to the div that's on my line 21. I'm not sure if it's on your guys' line 21. But the div that has the item description in it, we're just going to get rid of it. And we are going to replace it with a nav bar with a class name of item sub nav. And in that nav, we are going to have basically two links. One's going to be something that links to the story, and one's going to be something that links to the shipping. So we're going to wrap a nav link around each one of these items. We're going to use some backticks because we need to access the actual item ID. And then we are going to create a new path or an extension of our path that goes to, let's see. No, actually I lied. That's the next one. So this is going to be basically the default render. Whenever this page renders, this is what we're going to see. Oh, forgot my carrot.
By default, it's gonna display the story.
Yes.
Okay.
So the description.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have our closing nav link after our story. Okay. And then the next nav link is going to go to equals. Same deal. We're going to have backticks, and the route is virtually the same. The only thing that's different is that we're going to extend our URL to include the shipping. Parameter or query string. Okay. So we at least know right now that this works, or at least the clicking works. But we don't have anything in our description yet because we took that out. So we kind of have to fix that a little bit. So let's create a couple of new components. We'll call them just item description and item shipping. So in our components folder, item description.js, and then item shipping.js. Import React from React. Actually, let me see if he gave me code for this. Cool, he did that. So this is just going to be a functional component. So we're going to call it item description that takes in props and returns some JSX. And then we're just going to return a div that's, it's going to be our props.description. We're going to pass the props.description that we have from before. We're going to pass that into our item description. And then we're going to do virtually the same thing. Oh, export default. Don't forget that export default. That's always the number one thing I always forget. So we're basically going to virtually do the same thing for item shipping, except obviously we are going to change description shipping. Actually, I don't think we have a shipping object on state or a shipping property on props. So we'll just put shipping info here for right now. To be determined later. Okay. Now if we go back to our item.js, we still don't yet have anything here because we need to pass down those props. or we need to create those routes. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to have a route that has going to have a path of item list. Don't forget the backslash or the forward slash in the front. Slash ID. And then we are going to do a render method, curlies, and it's going to pass some props. And then it's going to return some JSX item description. And don't forget to pass the default props that come with React Router. And then we are going to pass our actual item. So item equals item. I already put item description under item. Oh, I don't need that. Okay, so right now, hopefully, we got item description. We imported that from the top. Make sure if it doesn't auto import for you when you tab over, when you start to type out item description. Usually if you start to type out the component that's not imported, if you hit tab, it'll auto import it for you. But if it doesn't do that, don't forget to import it at the top. All right, so we're passing down props, we're passing down item equals item, and then we go to our item description. Oh, it's going to be props.item.description. Okay. Yes, there we go. So we have our description showing up under story by default. Cool. Awesome.
Did you have? Okay.
Say that one more time.
No, I thought that when you click on the other, it was showing the same. Click on chicken.
It is for right now because we don't have anything. I haven't created the route for it.
Oh, right.
So I need to create the route for it. So let's go back to item. We're gonna create. We're basically gonna. I'm just gonna copy paste because that's gonna be the easiest thing. So we have route, and then the only thing it's going to be different, so we're going to change this to shipping at the end. We're going to add shipping on the end, and then the thing that we're going to render instead of item description is item shipping. And then hopefully it auto imported it for me. Yes. Don't forget to import it at the top if it doesn't auto import for you. Okay, so we're passing down the props. We've got item and it equals item. Let's take a look. Let's see. Shipping. Okay. So what do you notice happening here?
You have to use exact, right?
Yeah, nice. Good job. So we're gonna have to do exact on here, you think? Or exact on here?
No, well, the nav link accept the exact props.
Let's try it out. Not working. So let's try it on the route. Oh, there we go. It's on the route. Shipping info here. Nostalgia. Oh, I see. Wait. No, that's okay. Oh, it's really jumping around. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, because the div is different from the paragraph to the single line. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's expanding the div.
If we put, let's put some dummy data in there. I'm a big Doctor Who fan. So I always use Dr. Ipsum for my dummy data. Awesome. Looks better. Cool beans. Any questions on that? I know that was a lot of information.
Oh, click again on shipping. See something. All right, so it's actually getting the active only for both routes, right? For both nav links.
Oh yeah, you're true. Yeah, you're right. So let's do, what was it? Exact. Was that the keyword that we needed to use on that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Good catch.
There you go.
See, I don't use Navlink very often, but this is cool.
Yeah, works great.
Yeah. So I think the basic difference between Navlink and Link is that it has active by default, and you can set styling to that, and it makes it cool. So I think that's the main difference. I never use it. So.
I watched an older lecture, and the guy said that the only difference was active class. Having active class, when you go in between nav links, it'll give the one that you just clicked on the active class or whatever. He said that was the only difference.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
So the active class is generated by navlink. You don't have to put it on the CSS? Or
right.
Okay.
Well, I should say I actually don't know if there's an actual default. I do know in the CSS here, they actually have it. Oh wait, this is for nav. This is for the nav links. Where's the nav links? Another active. Oh, that's spelled wrong. Bold. Oh, okay. That makes a difference. But let's comment this out and see if there's a default. There is no.
Okay. Yeah, so you actually have to put it there. Okay.
Yeah, it toggles it automatically.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I think that's the big difference. Mm-hmm. So cool. All right. We have about, well, that covers Navlink really, because that's really the only difference. Let's talk about history.push real fast. I'm not going to go into great detail about what the history object is because you're going to learn that in computer science. But basically, it's an object that basically remembers where you've been, and it pushes any sort of website that you go to onto that object. So, like if you're starting out and you go to, I don't know, your email account, it'll push that onto your history stack. If you go to Facebook, it'll push that onto your history stack, but it'll remember that you've been to Gmail. And then if you go to, Lambda School's training kit, it'll push that onto the stack. It'll remember that you've been to Facebook and you've been to Gmail, and it does that with any website that you go to. That's how basically the forward and back button works on your internet browser. So React kind of has their own version of the history object. It's a stack. If any of you guys are familiar with data structures, it's a stack, and basically it remembers where you've been. That's all you need to know right now. You can figure out the rest later in computer science. So what history.push does, it's just another way for us to link somewhere. So like for buttons, for instance, a lot of times people, there's a couple of ways you can handle buttons. Many folks will put like a link around the button and just make the link clickable. But you can also, because JSX has this on-click function, you can basically create an on-click that'll do the same thing. So, and that's preferable actually for most things, in most cases. So let's do that real quick in the last like 5 minutes that we have here. So I'm going to do an on-click on this button, and it's just going to be, we're going to route to home. And that's just going to be the name of our function. And then we're going to go up to the top. Or excuse me, route to shop, because we're already on home, you know. Let's try that again. Route to shop. So we're going to go up here. Before our return, we're going to create a const route to shop. And it's going to be a function. And it's going to, because I should say, let's do this. Instead of route to shop, let's call it handle route. When I utilize the word handle and in a function, that usually signifies for me, in any code that I read to, is that it's an event of some sort. It's like looking for an event. So I like to utilize that handle as like the first word in my handlers, just to signify that it is indeed an event, and it's going to take in an event object. And then we're going to prevent default, prevent default. And then we are going to utilize this thing called props. Props dot, why is it doing that? Props.
Oh, because you have something imported at the top.
Oh, I might have accidentally hit tab.
Yeah.
Props dot history. And if you look at the props dot history object on our application, let's navigate down. History. You'll notice that there is a push function. We're actually going to utilize that push function. And the push function, what it's going to do, it's going to take basically anywhere that the string that is passed into the push function, it's going to push that onto the history object. So it's basically going to take that person to that place and put it on the history object, so that React can use it for whatever it's going to use it for. Just in the same manner that our browser back and forward button works.
So that's if I want to handle the, like if I want to go back to a previous page, that's how to do it within React, right? Because it won't listen to the history from the console, from the browser.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I will have to ask.
Okay.
I'm not entirely certain on that.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're going to utilize this push function, and we are going to push to our item list, because that is where we want to go.
Okay.
Props is not props dot history dot push. Why is wait, do I have that'd be one. Props. Make sure home has props. All right, so if we go to our home now, I have to, that button never worked in the first place. So if I click on it, it should take us straight to our shop. Any questions on this?
Okay, so the difference between using history and a link is basically that you use history on, like in this case, on a button, like an event. Okay. Okay.
We're using it as an on-click instead of an actual link.
Okay, and that's because we want to go specifically to a specific address. Like if I just want to go back and forth, I can use the other methods for on the history props. Like I noticed that there is a forward and back.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You can figure out how those work. I don't 100% know how those work, so but I'm sure there's a blog post about it somewhere on Medium.
Okay.
I've just never had the chance to take the time to actually do it. So,
can we get the final link to this project posted?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. Any other questions or concerns? Questions about your project at all? We actually covered everything that I wanted to cover, so.
So earlier when I was watching the older lecture, the guy was trying to explain when you would use push, history.push.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying a lot of times people will put it like after you fill out a survey, it'll take you back to the main menu of a page, or after you accept a friend request, it'll go back to like the default version of like no notifications or whatever. How you were describing it, I think how I perceived it was it'll bring you to a new route. Could it, if you changed state and it re-rendered and gave you like a new version of your component, could you use history to go back to an old version that you had? Or
I don't think it works in that manner, but I could test it to see.
So is it meant to just bring you to a different route specifically? Like that's its sole purpose?
Yeah, one of the sole purposes of the history object is just to remember the web pages you visited.
Okay.
It's a stack basically. So it's a first in, last out. So basically whatever you're pushing to, it's pushing it onto the stack. So it's pushing it onto, like, think of the stack as an array, and basically it's pushing the website name onto the array. And then every new place you go, it's pushing it onto the array.
Okay.
So that's basically the way it works. I think it probably depends on the way the site is built too. I think some sites allow for state to be remembered. So like if you were to fill out a form, hit the submit button, and then hit the back button, like some sites will remember the state, other sites will not. So, or they'll say something like, or pop up, or an alert will pop up and say, do you want to resend the data, or something to that effect. So some sites will remember the state, but some sites will not. Most likely, most sites will not.
So with this push here, you're just adding this item list to the URL?
You're not. It's item list is it follows the route. So whatever the route is, it'll match whatever the route is rendering. So we're merely pushing that particular URL onto the history object. So it remembers where you've been.
And that with it brings the component that's attached to the route, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I feel that link will do a history push under the hood somehow.
I'm not certain that it does, but I can certainly look. And link is still a very valid way to actually do this.
Okay.
It's just, some developers make it a convention to do it this way. Some developers make it a convention to do it the other way. So it's good to know both ways.
Okay.
So, but I will look to see if link does that under the hood. Any other questions or concerns about your project or anything like that?
I was working on movie lists and got to a section that I kind of stuck at. I know you said you're going to record another piece for us tonight, but I was just wondering if I could maybe get some help after that.
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
Cool.
I actually covered everything that I wanted to cover, so I actually don't need to record anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if you want to dismiss everybody or whatnot.
Yeah, sure. We're actually finished here, so yeah, if you want to stay behind and get some help, please stay. Otherwise, have a great night. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
All right, Christina. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.